thank you for rejoining me on the After Business Morning. Welcome to Global Business. And here we're going to be taking a look at business news stories around the continent of Africa and indeed the rest of the world. My name is Ubong Kings. Here are the headlines that are making the round. Starting out from the automotive world, where it's reported that Toyota is to delay U.S. electric vehicle production to 2026. And still from the global economy, Coca-Cola to close logistics sites in Germany. And France molds tax increase for large companies. We'll bring you details of these news stories and more right after this break. Stay tuned. You are watching Global Business right here on the After Business Morning, and we will begin with stories, incidentally, about Africa, where it is reported that Brazilian state-run oil company Petrobras has recently announced that its board has approved the acquisition of a 10% stake in the offshore deep Western Orange Basin oil block in South Africa, where in an interview last month, Silvia dos Anjos, head of exploration and production at Petróleo Brasil SA, that's Petrobras, revealed that Brazil's state-controlled oil company is in talks to acquire stakes in African exploration blocks from major oil companies including ExxonMobil, Shell plc, Total Energies, and Equinor ASA. Meanwhile, the acquisition followed a competitive process led by French oil major Total, which operates the project and will maintain a 40% stake in the block. Let me try to break this story down real quickly. Now, do you believe me when I say, do you now believe me, if I may put it that way, that South Africa's economy is very much more positioned or much well positioned than that of Nigeria to receive foreign direct investments? Now, just imagine that a country's state-controlled oil company is in talks to acquire stakes in an African exploration block from major companies, major oil companies, likes of ExxonMobil was mentioned, Shell was mentioned, Total Energies, and of course Equinor, but not in Nigeria. Oh well, I'm reminded of when the company Petrobras was seeking to sell huge stakes of their company some time ago, but all that has changed now, because with this intent of pretty much buying from somewhere else, it pretty means that they're back on track to make more profit from the oil and gas industry. African news takes us back to that period in review. Let's take a look.
The Brazilian state-owned company Petróleo Brasileiro SA is poised to accept the sale of its stake in its African subsidiary for about $1.3 billion. According to local newspaper Valor Econômico, Petrobras owns 50% of Petrobras Oil and Gas BV, or Petrobras Africa. Brazilian financial company BTG Pactual SA holds a 40% stake in the company, and Helios Investment Partners hold the remaining 10%. And according to an anonymous source, the three shareholders would sell their share for about $2.6 billion. Reuters reported on the 18th of June that a consortium led by Vito SA had begun exclusive negotiations to acquire stakes in Petrobras Africa, and emerging as a winner for a number of bidders, including its competitor Glencore. Petrobras Africa participates in 2 deep-water oil exploration blocks in Nigeria. The heavily indebted company announced its intentions to sell this stake in November as part of a disinvestment program aimed at unlocking $21 billion in assets by the end of the year.
And moving on to stories, other business stories, if you may, and this time around from the automotive world, it's reported that Toyota, the Japanese automaker, is said to delay its electric vehicle production in North America to early 2026, citing design adjustments and a slow rate of electric vehicle sales as the production of its first battery EV model, a 3-row SUV in Kentucky, will start later than planned as the company aims to introduce up to 7 new EV modules in the US over the next 2 years. Unfortunately, supply disruption and governance issues has prompted Toyota to delay the start of US EV production, by 6 months to around June 2026, as they initially aimed to manufacture electric SUVs under its luxury Lexus brand in North America by 2030, but has scrapped that plan in favor of shipping completed vehicles to the US from Japan. Let's hold up real quickly and let's check something out. This story to me brings to the fore the reality of the nosedive in sales and penetration, if you may, of electric vehicles in the US. The truth is that the outrageous tariff imposed by the European Union on specifically Chinese-made electric vehicles, pundits argue that this has generally affected sales and widespread acceptability and, if you may, permeation of electric vehicles. Anyway, Reuters tells us more on this particular development. Let's take a look.
Toyota is putting back plans to make electric vehicles in the US. That's according to reports by Japan's Nikkei newspaper. It says output now won't start there until the first half of 2026, instead of late next year. The company spokesman later said that early 2026 was now likely. The Japanese auto giant plans to make electric SUVs at a plant in Kentucky. It has invested some $1.3 billion in the facility to prepare for production. It's all part of moves to introduce 5 to 7 battery electric models in the country over the next 2 years. Reuters sources have previously said that supply disruptions and corporate governance issues were likely to delay the start of production. EV sales have seen a slowdown worldwide, partly due to diverging policies on support for purchases of the zero-emission vehicles. The Nikkei says Toyota has also abandoned plans to make Lexus-branded EVs in North America by 2030. It says the firm will instead ship the premium cars from Japan.
You're still watching Global Business right here on the AFIA Business Morning on AFIA TV. Kindly join in on the conversation, and just so you know, you can watch it live right now on our dedicated AFIA Business YouTube channel. Kindly tap in the search bar www.youtube.com/@AFIA Business while you're there. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe so you get notifications on all business-related content coming to you from AFIA TV. You can also follow us on Instagram at AFIA Business _ to be a part of our social media community. Up next will be more business news stories from the rest of the world after this timeout. Stay tuned. You're welcome back to the AFIA Business Morning, and you're watching Global Business. Now to the rest of our stories. And we're moving on to other business news stories from the rest of the world. And from the world of beverages, drinks giant Coca-Cola is to cut some 500 jobs in Germany over the next year as it sets to shut down 5 production and logistics sites in Germany in an attempt to cut costs and adapt to changing logistics trends, where the Coca-Cola Euro-Pacific partners, which handles Coca-Cola's bottling, distribution and selling activities in Germany, reviewed plans to be mostly in the Cologne area. However, CCEP shared that this decision comes as the company tries to become more cost-effective in the face of increasing market competition, as well as adapt to changing logistics in the beverage sector. Now, this particular story reminds me of something very fundamental. I did share this earlier, as at yesterday, actually, that this issue will continue. I'm talking about the issue of loss of jobs, retrenchment, TCC, cutting down costs, etc., and all the plenty drama that comes with it. Because there is a global meltdown, let's face it. I know that quite a number of countries are trying to manage it so that the people don't really see it, but it's really happening. You know, I'm actually reminded of when it was reported that Coca-Cola actually had the time to future-proof their logistics center, still in Germany some time ago, with automated picker and automated layer picker solution. But as it stands, there's pretty much no solution for these imminent job losses. Kroger supply chain takes it away from here. Let's take a look.
%90 of the volume of these distribution centers was coming to Antwerp. which leads to an increased layer picking volume. On the other hand, we have the changes in our portfolio, and we have to look for a solution for layer picking our non-carbonated soft drinks. Thirdly, we had several constraints in our actual warehouse building and process flow, which we have to look for other way of working. And last but not least, we are stimulating our salespeople to deliver more and more per layer to our customers, while our layer picking cost is much lower than manual handling.
So this is an automated layer picking solution that we installed at the site. It takes full pallets from our ASRS and it transforms it according to our customers' demand. The capacity is 150 layers per hour and it can manage simultaneously 110 SKUs. In addition to the previously mentioned capability to reduce a higher volume on a more reduced cost, it's very important to note that the new solution is also much safer for our operators. And thanks to this system, we have the opportunity to face the changing world of the customers around us, and we are able to cope with the changing portfolio of our new.
And there you have it. I mean, that was when Coca-Cola was boasting of this new logistics plant right there. But right now, most of them are going to lose their jobs, as it were. Moving away from that to other reports this morning, and in an attempt to end this bulletin, let's say that the French government is examining a range of plans to reduce the public deficit, including a temporary tax on companies making more than 1 billion euros per year, as it sets to tighten its purse strings and hike up taxes in a bid to get its public finances in order. Meanwhile, the government reported consideration of an exceptional tax on profits of large companies fits rather in line with comments that Prime Minister Michel Barnier had made in recent weeks. Now, frankly, if you ask me, it does seem like this is the one way to go. I mean, raising taxes seems like the one way most governments tend to increase or generate revenue. But then, are you aware that taxation is the only practical, one of the only practical, if you may, practical means of raising revenue, the revenue to finance government spending on the goods and services that most of us demand? Are you aware? But here is what is interesting, right? Economic development, listen to this quickly. Economic development will often generate additional needs for tax revenue to finance a rise in public spending. Let me take that again, real quickly. It's a function, increasing tax is a function of economic development. In other words, there has to be a commensurate economic development when you're talking about tax increases, right? But is that the case in Nigeria or almost anywhere else? Other climes you would say is justified. They are making these amenities available. But in Nigeria, would you sincerely say there is a huge economic development? Then why does it seem like there's always an increase in tax year in, year out, maybe day after day? Anyway, France 24 English reports on this story of France's tax policy. Let's take a look.
An urgent goal with few details on how to achieve it. Michel Barnier's first official policy speech as Prime Minister saw him set out the new government's priorities, none more pressing than France's fiscal woes.
A sword of Damocles is now hanging over the head of the French people, and without action and courage now, it will hang much heavier over the heads of our children and grandchildren. The real sword of Damocles is our colossal financial debt.
Barnier's first order of business, bringing France's budget deficit to within 5% of GDP by the end of 2025. To achieve it, the government will need to come up with some 40 billion euros. Barnier says 1/3 of that will be via new revenues. His office has suggested that next year's corporate tax rate could rise from 25 to 33% on companies that brought in more than €1 billion during 2024. The Treasury is also reportedly planning to crack down on tax avoidance by France's wealthiest citizens, potentially through a 25% minimum tax on top earners. The Prime Minister insists any tax hikes will be temporary and are not a rejection of President Macron's supply-side economic policy.
We will do this without jeopardizing our competitiveness. In reality, there can be no sharing and no redistribution if there is no upstream activity and production on our territory.
That still leaves the other two-thirds to be found via budget cuts, and there Barnier has furnished few details. Ideas recently floated include cutting dead weight in France's apprenticeship programs, consolidating government agencies with too much overlap, and moving some government offices out of central Paris. Analysts say those measures will be far from sufficient.
Oh well, we'll follow up with this story as well as other stories as they unfold and keep you in the loop as to those developments. And talking about keeping you in the loop, you may want to get to our dedicated After Your Business YouTube channel and watching live as it's live right now. And just kindly type in the search bar www.youtube.com/AfterYourBusiness. While you're there, hit the like button. Remember, you should subscribe so you get notifications on all business-related content coming to you from Afia TV. You can also follow us on Instagram at AfiaBusiness_, just to be part of our social media community so you don't miss anything. You're watching the Afia Business Morning right here on Afia TV. Coming next will be a review of the conversations we had in the week. And may interest you to know that this is going to be stemming from Monday through to Thursday. Just today, all the conversations we had, we're going to be taking a look at all of them in a bit. And on the segment, the Eastern Business Report. My name is Ubong Kings. Stay tuned.